the black belt's a goal, but it's not the end, right? And that's with anything, whether it's business, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's, in anything that you're doing, as long as you're able to not lose yourself when you achieve that goal. And that's something that I've always been relatively good at, and maybe it comes from not being the best or the fastest or always being in first, is that you can always find that next goal, right? Okay, I achieved this, now what's the next thing I need to do? The discipline to continue to show up on the day you don't want to show up. The day you don't want to train is probably the day you need to most. And guarantee if you don't feel good going in, barring something weird happening, you're probably going to feel good on the way out.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Paid Forward Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Seward, along with my co-host, Keegan Walls, and today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Ian Maland. Ian could kick both of our butts. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. He is a black belt. He is a co-founder and owner of a local jiu-jitsu gym, Driftless Academy. And kind of a different episode for us. We've never had somebody in this realm to talk about it, but what I really hope today is you are a master at your craft. You're a master at what you're doing, and yes, there might be some levels higher, but like you've went on this journey of achieving black belt. So I'm hoping that we can talk today about what it means to be a master at your craft, and there's going to be a lot of people, probably most, that aren't in martial arts or jiu-jitsu, but how can you become a master at your craft and what you're doing?
Sure. So absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So becoming a black belt, mentioned there's like a 15-year journey for you?
For me, yep. I started in 2008 when I played football in college, and after torn my knee a couple of times, decided I needed something less dangerous. So I decided fighting made sense. And I was a powerlifter, football player, and so was big and strong, but couldn't run a mile. By the time I finished college and accidentally got my first job up in the cities, I think I was probably like 250 pounds or so. And I could squat 600 pounds, but like I said, I couldn't run anywhere with bum knees. So I needed to lose some weight, and lifting weights was getting boring. So I'd done like traditional martial arts for most of my life. I got a black belt in Taekwondo when I was 18. Did karate. I think I started when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. And when I moved up to the cities, like I said, I wanted to do something new, and I wanted to get in shape. And UFC was, getting a lot bigger around then, 2008, 2009. And I figured if I want to look like those guys, I should probably do what they do. And so I just found a gym up in the cities and kind of got back into the martial arts life.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just kind of stumbled into it, and it was more of just kind of a personal health development kind of thing more than anything?
Pretty much, yeah. I didn't get to wrestle in high school.
Okay.
I went to GET back before they had brought it back. And so when I walked in and they asked what I wanted to do, I was like, well, I've done Taekwondo and all that fun stuff. They asked if I wrestled, and I said no. So they said, you need to learn Jiu-Jitsu. And I said, what's that? They said, the stuff in the UFC, the stuff on the ground. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's choking each other out, trying to break each other's arms and stuff. And started doing that. It was way better than getting kicked in the face. And so I was initially doing both kickboxing and a little bit of Jeet Kune Do, which is like a kung fu variant, and then started doing jiu-jitsu and just tried to lose a bunch of weight, and now we're whatever. So 16 years later.
What's unique about jiu-jitsu from other martial arts?
So most of the time when people think about martial arts, they think about karate, kung fu, fancy flying kicks and little people screaming, breaking bricks and all that, and wood and all that fun stuff. Jiu-jitsu is based mainly on the ground. It started as, if you've heard the term judo, judo was Japanese martial art, kind of like Greco-Roman wrestling. There's the throwing portion and then the ground portion. It was essentially all one. Jiu-jitsu was the ground portion of judo. As judo formed more into a sport, kind of like they do with a lot of sports, they take away the stuff that either isn't as exciting or they're not as good at, or whatever the situation is. And so the jiu-jitsu portion kind of fell to the side of judo in the more modern eras. It was picked up in, I want to say like the 20s by in Brazil, and kind of turned into a way for smaller people to win street fights, and deal with things, in that way instead of, with weapons and stuff. Like a lot of altercations are dealt with at this point. But, the idea behind it is that I don't have to be bigger, stronger, better looking than the other person to win the fight. I just have to last longer, and one way to do that is if somebody is, like I said, bigger, stronger, and able to get you to the ground, or you're able to get them to the ground by holding on to them and controlling them, you can sap their energy. Right. You just have to get them tired, essentially, not in like a weird, boo way. But, so a lot of it is based around, especially with the gi, the funny pajamas. It gives you a lot of things that you can hold on to that maybe aren't legal in like a wrestling context or something like that. But that's how I usually describe it to people. Is it's like kind of like wrestling. It's like the bottom portion of wrestling. So,
and to compete in it, is it kind of similar to a wrestling match where you're one-on-one with somebody else?
Yeah, so most tournaments will start like, you both start standing, we slap hands, we tap knucks, and then you get started. Some people will literally just sit to their butt and try to pull the other person on top of them because that's where they think their skill set lies. Some people will, especially like people who have wrestled or done judo and things like that, will try to keep it up and standing as much as they can. There's different point systems depending on which tournament you're in. There are tournaments where it's submission only, so there are no points. And so there are also time limit submission only matches, or no time limit submission only matches. So
somebody's going to sleep.
Well, or they're going for a long time. I once watched a match that was an hour and 45 minutes long.
Oh my!
We literally left, went, got lunch, came back, and finished the match.
Wow.
But I mean, that's what can happen in that rule set when you get people that are extremely high level. I competed when I was down in Milwaukee, is where I did a lot of training. So I started up in the Twin Cities. I was only there for about 8 months because I was working for a recruiting company in 2008. And turns out not a lot of companies are hiring during recession. Yeah. And so my wife was in grad school in Milwaukee at the time, and they told us one person in every office is going to lose their job. So I just raised my hand. I was like, I didn't like my job for this situation. I did.
I volunteered.
Yeah, I did. That's literally what it was. And so I ended up, I was up there, like I said, for about 9 months, and then moved down to Milwaukee, started training there, trained there for about 3 years, and then moved back to here. So that was 2011, I think 2012, something like that.
And did you know you wanted to go on this journey of achieving black belt from that moment, or just kind of?
Not at all. I mean, it's one of those things where I've always been really good at just keep showing up.
Yeah.
I was never the strongest or the fastest. I mean, with football, with everything, I just figured if I just keep showing up and I work harder than everybody else, or at least try to, then good things will hopefully happen. I figured barring anything else, it would probably happen eventually. And that's kind of how, my Taekwondo black belt was the same way. I started in karate when I was 6. And I mean, a lot of times in those traditional martial arts, you get black belt pretty quick. But because I moved around and, started and quit, it really didn't happen for quite a while. And so it was kind of the same thing with this. I was the highest or the only ranking person really in the area that was active. When I moved back from Milwaukee, there was me and like 5 or 6 MMA fighters. And so we would find any mat we could, anywhere we could, to train. An MMA gym opened up on the south side called Three Guys Martial Arts for a little while, that a friend of mine owned, or a couple of friends of mine owned. And so I started coaching there a little bit. And then a larger gym opened in Holman, so I ended up coaching there for about 10, 11 years. But for the majority of it, we weren't really affiliated under anybody, and if I don't have anybody promote me, you don't promote yourself. That's a great way to get embarrassed in a YouTube video when somebody finds out. So we eventually ended up affiliating under a gentleman out of Hudson named Mike Ellefson. And so he promoted myself and another guy named John Fro about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So
very cool. How did Driftless Academy come to be?
I was coaching at Ironworks in Holman, and my partners at the time and I kind of realized that there was an underserved market in lacrosse, especially on like the south side going towards Genoa, Stoddard, all that fun stuff. And I was, ever since the Three Guys MMA shut down, I had been doing just like little workouts and classes at Iron Physique on the north side. So I had, 8 to 10 guys that would show up, consistently, but they didn't want to drive all the way to Holman. And so we kind of decided, hey, with the colleges here, it would make sense to open a second facility. And so we initially called it Ironworks Driftless Academy, as to keep it separated from them, just financially and everything, so they didn't have to take on the burden. And that way we could kind of run it how we wanted to. And then we kind of rebranded over the last 6-7 months to just call ourselves Driftless Academy and kind of build our own brand.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And so you already mentioned it a little bit, like the difference between karate. So then getting your black belt, like how does one become a black belt in jiu-jitsu? Like what does that time frame look like? How do you go up to the next one?
So
I don't know the colors.
That's okay. That's okay. There aren't a lot of them in jiu-jitsu, at least not in most schools. It's white, blue, purple, brown, black. And then you get into all the variations of that. There are some more above that, but most of them are based on time, up to red belt. Like I believe I said before, there's only really one in the world. And so everybody starts as a white belt when they come in. It's the one you get free with your gi when you buy it. Hopefully, sometimes not, surprisingly. But everybody starts there. It's usually a combination of knowledge base and ability and time that's going to start getting you stripes on your belt. Just little pieces of athletic tape that you wrap around in order to delineate, hey, I've been here this long. I'm starting to progress along. It's amazing how much like something that simple can mean to a lot of people, especially when you're putting in the work, putting in the effort, doing everything from warm-ups to getting, strangled by your friends and, being used as a demonstration dummy for people that don't even know what they're doing, all that fun stuff. But there's 4 stripes on each belt in most cases. And like I said, they can take anywhere from, 3 months to years to get, depending on how often you're training. Especially for the first couple, I have kind of a general rule of like 40 classes. And so for guys, when I was in Milwaukee and I was able to train a lot, I was training 2 to 3 times a day, and it's not like weightlifting where it tears apart your muscles. As long as you train intelligently, you can do that consistently, and as long as you're feeding your body, taking care of yourself, getting sleep, all that fun stuff. But, so usually it's about 40 classes a day or 40 classes. And then the knowledge that comes along with that. We've got kind of a curriculum built out, all the way up to black belt, really, that our instructor gave us. But I have I've focused it down to some different stuff that I look for as far as trying to get to a blue belt. Average is probably about 2 years for that. And that's assuming you're coming 2 to 3 times a day. You know what I mean? I actually have the curriculum posted on my website, so that people can see exactly what all the moves are. I've got a YouTube channel where I've got like 3,000 videos. And so I have most of those moves linked to videos so people can see what they are. Everything from the warm-ups we do at the beginning of class to different submissions and different chains of maneuvers or techniques. So blue belt usually is when people kind of really decide, hey, am I going to do this or not? The old joke is there's more blue belts in the world than anything else, and you just never see them. and there's usually some jokes made about, I'm going to give you this, but you better be back tomorrow, So, but really what it boils down to is a lot of times it's that 18 month to 2 years when that happens. And if you think about a lot of like life changes, they usually happen in those 18 months to 2 year increments. So maybe you start right out of college and within a year and a half, you've gotten a new job or you got married or had a kid or whatever the situation is. And so suddenly people's priorities change and their training habits change. That's also when a lot of people that decide they're going to do it, they start competing a lot. And so people that compete a lot tend to get better quicker. The other side of that is that usually, at least for my blue belts, I expect that they're able to teach our curriculum, at least to a certain extent. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not know all the details. But if I take them with a brand new person, right, and I say, okay, show them this, show them that, whatever it is, I expect them to be able to do it. And so a lot of times you'll see that kind of bifurcate into people that are teaching and people that are training, or people that are training to compete. I've always said I think there should be 2 belt systems, where one is for competition, right, and one is for the knowledge base. I don't think there's really any good way to do that, but you'll get people that they shoot up through the belt system because they're just tapping everybody, right? Submitting everybody and beating everybody, but they can't teach you how to do a basic technique, right? Or one that they're not familiar with, right? Yep. On the other side, there's people, and that's how I always was. I had no interest in competing ever. In fact, I told my wife, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, when I started, that I would never get in a cage unless I was told to by my teachers, because she was completely like terrified. Oh my God, you're gonna get punched in the head and all scarred, and so I didn't until I got told that I was gonna fight, and I was like, oh no, I have to tell. I literally didn't tell her until like 2 weeks before the fight, because I was more worried about her than I was about getting in a cage. But for me, like I've always been a relatively good teacher, tutor, whatever. I did that during college and even in high school and stuff. And so for me, I've always been more interested in, okay, how do I make this work for everybody? And I think that really helped when I moved to La Crosse, and there weren't a lot of people. And when somebody comes in, whether they're big and strong or whether they're small and tiny, we can figure out how to make it work for them, and hopefully keep the people safe while they're training.
So who is the decider of the VAR system? Of like, is there an association, or is there who decides when it's time to move on and the test and curriculum?
So the general rule is that you can promote up to a belt below you.
Okay.
So like when I was a blue belt, I really couldn't promote anybody.
Yeah.
Plus we weren't affiliated with anybody. So to your point, there are a number of different associations. The gentleman I'm affiliated under got his black belt from a gentleman named Higan Machado, who's related to the initial Gracie family. So it's relatively high up there. But he's a 3rd degree black belt, I believe still. If that's changed since Ellie, don't kill me. But so he can essentially make a black belt. That's the idea. Is a 3rd stripe black belt can make a black belt. And then for me, I can promote pretty much anybody I would want to, but I would want to at least let him know. He's got faith in me and who I think is ready to move up. Generally, we have him come down for seminars and things like that, once a quarter, every other quarter, something like that. And usually if we have anything past a blue belt that needs to get promoted, we'll do it with him, just as a sign of respect. I don't think he would require me to if I asked him and I told him, hey, this person's been doing this and they deserve to. But it's kind of it's a celebration, really. And we're not going to put somebody up for a test or a belt if we don't think they deserve it. One of the other kind of jokes within the community is that if you ask for the belt, you're probably not going to get it, right? Just because, you want to know you deserve it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And even if you think you do, well, maybe I need to show somewhere, I need to take a competition, or I need to start teaching more, and really try to take the initiative to do that. So, yeah, as far as who decides it, it's really up to the instructor and then whoever their association is through. Some associations do have pretty strict guidelines on training and techniques and number of competitions and all that fun stuff. I've been pretty much left up to, I think I've earned Ellie's trust and, who I think should be promoted at this point. So
how many competitions did you end up doing? Was it just the one?
No, I did one MMA fight in a cage.
How'd that go? How'd it go?
He kept hitting me, so I just hugged him for like 8.5 minutes. And just kind of laid on him. It was one of those boring fights where like one guy gets hit and then just grabs him. But I won.
Really?
By decision. Honestly, it was the weirdest thing. Up until the day that my coach told me I was going to fight, I was trained 2 to 3 times a day. I was all excited. The next day, I didn't want to go to the gym. And this thing that had got me in shape, that was keeping me sane, like it was my hobby, the thing that I enjoyed, I didn't enjoy anymore. And so I didn't have any more interest in trying to pursue MMA at all. I still trained both kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, but I didn't want to fight again. Jiu-jitsu was a lot more fun. I don't know how many competitions I did, but I did a whole bunch of them in white belt and blue belt, all around kind of the Midwest. I went to the Arnold Classic one year. And it's not like I didn't do any of the ones where you have to be invited. You pay to go to them, so they're going to let anybody compete. But
Austin could compete.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, we could sign. There's a tournament this weekend in the Dells. If you guys want to come, you're more than welcome to. Sign you both up.
All right. Sign up under Austin Seward.
Right? But yeah, so I did enjoy that. But while I was, still down in Milwaukee, I was helping teach some classes and things like that, and that's where my passion really fell in. I loved to train. I loved to work out and roll and go to new gyms. And I've always found that I can take care of that competitive side of my personality through that. And that allows me to focus, I think, a lot more on developing other people and trying to teach as many people as I can. I tend to be one of those guys that I'm like, hey, the more the merrier. And if you don't want to do it my way, that's fine. We'll find a way to do it. But in my mind, if it works, it's right. I'm not one of those instructors that's like, you have to do it my way or else, you're excommunicated or anything. If it works, it's right. Nothing ever works like it's supposed to. So that's kind of like most things in life, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you sorry. You're good. Do you have like a favorite technique or move that you're best at? Like when you were in the competitions or the MMA, like do you have a go-to?
I did.
Okay.
It's one of those things where after 16 years, I've probably lost more go-tos than I have at any given time. Cause like I'll be working on some, get really good at it. But then especially in a small pond like lacrosse, most of us train with each other very regularly.
Yeah.
And so as I get good at something or somebody gets good at something, everybody else gets good at stopping it. Mm-hmm. And so now you have to find something else that starts to work. Right. And then they get good at stopping that. And so it's really interesting to watch your game evolve and say, okay, that thing that was working, well, now it doesn't work anymore. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else would come visit and suddenly your stuff works again. Mm-hmm. So I try to encourage our guys to do tournaments or travel or go to different gyms just to be able to experience that feeling of, hey, they don't know what I'm going to do. Because some training sessions can get a little stagnant when you're rolling with the same people every single time, and you both know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. It can be very comforting. It can be fun to try to get outside that box, but there are other times where you're just like, oh, we're doing this again. Oh, there's that one again. So I've always really enjoyed playing in the gi, the like I said, the funny pajamas, because you can do a lot of funny, weird, like strangle positions and wrap things around people's limbs and all that fun stuff. So I guess my favorite submissions are probably either a triangle, which is using your legs to submit somebody, an arm bar, where you're trying to use your whole body to hyperextend their arm, and then what's called a bow and arrow choke, where you've got their lapel, your leg across their body, and you basically bend them like a bow with your entire back pulling on their neck.
That's a sweet name because Austin's super into archery.
Yeah.
So I think what would be cool, since this is our first time with a fighter, is you should do the bow and arrow choke. I think we should show it live, and I want Austin out.
I wish that was going to happen. Unfortunately,
I think that would be sick. I think of all the reels we've ever had, Austin going out cold, live on the podcast.
So maybe I wouldn't say live, but maybe you guys can stop over to the gym one of these times. We'll throw a gi on you, and I could show you how to make it happen.
Yeah,
so.
Put Keegan's name on that list.
So I do I do have some videos of it online. I'm sure you guys could probably splice one into the podcast if you wanted to kind of show what it is.
But I'll Photoshop Austin's face.
There you go. Yeah, feel free.
So how much of a jiu-jitsu match is like your physical ability versus just having a mental library of different moves that you can do on somebody?
It's a little bit of both. The more you know, the less you use a lot of times, because you don't have to have this huge, body of knowledge to get a good workout, right? I mean, as long as you understand the principles, you can start, rolling, live sparring with somebody relatively quickly. And obviously the newer somebody is, the more tricks you might be able to get away with. But I mean, you find that, like I said, you kind of settle into a certain game that you're playing, and sometimes have to push yourself out of that because just like any type of exercise, your body falls into muscle memory quite a bit. One of my favorite things about a live jiu-jitsu match is the fact that it can be, if you don't control it, it can be like your brain shuts off, And for me, I've always had one of, like you mentioned it earlier, like I'm naturally an introvert. And so for me, I've never been able to shut my brain off. And so anytime I can find something that will, I relish it. But yeah, I've always found that the more I know, the less I have to use, but also the easier it is for me to be in the right position at the right time, because I don't have to be faster than you if I'm just there first. So if I can see the path you're going on because you're not as experienced, or because I know you do it a lot, or whatever the situation is, I can put myself in a position to take advantage of whatever it is. So.
And how does somebody win a match?
It depends on the rule set. You can win by points if it's a points tournament, or by submission. Even if you can get somebody, even if they don't physically tap out, but if you surprise, make something hurt and they scream out, or yell or grunt in a weird way.
Really?
So yeah, if their hands are tied up, they stomp their feet, still counts as a tap. So it's usually submission or points. I mean, sometimes people, something freaky will happen and somebody will get hurt, but that's not nearly as common as it is in some sports.
Many people go out, or do they always tap first?
It kind of depends. Some of us meatheads tend to fight a little bit longer, and it depends on the situation. Like the MMA fight I mentioned, there were a couple of times I literally thought I could stop this right now, by tapping out.
I would have tapped.
Well, but then, like I said, the inner meathead comes out and I go, or I'll just go to sleep. It doesn't hurt. The world closes in, you hear.
So what does that feel like?
Yeah.
You see it on UFC, what does that feel like?
It depends on the submission. So like a good blood choke, more like it doesn't really hurt, right? Your carotid arteries get compressed, your brain just kind of slowly shuts down. We always tell everybody, if it doesn't hurt but they still go out, you're obviously that's the perfect ideal. Now sometimes you don't get it perfect, and the trachea starts to get squeezed, or the jaw is in there, or something like that, and those suck a lot more. But if you're in a good blood choke, the world just closes in like elevator doors, and then you start hearing a wom 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 noise.
You make it sound
way.
You make it sound almost romantic.
Well, I mean, it's
peaceful.
It can be. But a lot of times you don't realize it's happening. And that's what tends to happen with because if there's no pain, right? If there's no pain, if you don't know what's happening, you don't realize what's going on. And especially, you're probably in a bad position, right? You're probably struggling.
Yeah.
When your heart rate goes up, the front of your brain, your thinking brain shuts down anyway, right?
Do those doors close quick then?
It depends on how good the submission is and how your body's moving and how you can move. They definitely can. I mean, you can get if you get a perfect, strangling, it's 2-3 seconds.
See ya.
But I always tell everybody, if you think you have the submission of a blood choke of some sort, hold on for 15 seconds. Either they're unconscious or you're doing it wrong, right? It's one or the other. So wasting the energy of continuing to try to squeeze doesn't do you any good, right? Because by that point they should probably be out.
But you don't know.
Not necessarily. Depends. It depends. I mean, people will literally go to sleep with their eyes open, right? So a lot of times you don't realize.
Isn't there a ref that'll see?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully,
not with his eyes open. He's like, man, this dude's been in this triangle. Well, this guy's been in the triangle for 20 minutes.
Well, more often than not, you got your coaches are watching, right? Yeah. The other people are watching. If you stop moving, a lot of times they'll do something just like in WWE where they raise your arm or something like that, and if it falls, they'll make you let go. Yeah. And they get it wrong sometimes. But better to be safe than sorry. The upside is, I mean, barring something catastrophic happening in that motion, like a blood choke isn't going to do long-term damage, we hope, any more than anything else. It's not like a concussion where, you get head kicked in kickboxing and you shut down and, you got a headache for a week. Usually with a blood choke, depending how long it is, as soon as you come back a little bit, you just make sure you're not dizzy and you just go right back to what you're doing.
And you feel normal.
Mostly.
For the most part.
I'm a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've gone out and woken up in emotion, like you see in the UFC where somebody goes out and then they start trying to take the ref down or something like that. Yeah. I've literally done that.
I literally just saw a video like that. Yeah. He started attacking the ref.
Yep. I've done that to be where you'll be in a submission. I'm fine. All of a sudden you're holding onto a single leg. You're like, what happened? Yeah. Right. That's literally what it is. You're just like, what happened?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. It can be. The human body's crazy. But I mean, the hopefully and I'm not a doctor, I just play one on TV. So like hopefully the deprivation, to your brain isn't long enough that it's going to cause any long-term damage. We'll find out how people think of this interview and whether they think I have brain damage. But I'll blame it on football.
It was the concussions not going up.
So for somebody new like me, if I were to come into your gym, like what are the first few things that you're teaching somebody?
So for me, the way I teach, I have a couple different styles of classes that we run at our gym. Our traditional jiu-jitsu class, a brand new person comes in, our fundamentals class, those are the ones I suggest they come to. It starts out with just individual warm-ups. So learning how to move on the ground. Because if you think about it, I know you and I were talking about, having little kids. I don't know, Austin, if you have any kids, but kids move like I have to teach adults to move, right? You think about how much time they spend on the ground versus how much time you spend on the ground, right? If you're not a wrestler, then just the ability to manipulate your body on the ground can be extremely confusing. Because if you think about most sports that you play, you use your legs for propulsion. Right? For moving yourself forward, backwards. Not a lot of twisting, things like that, right? A lot of cutting, whatnot. But unless you're like a gymnast or something like that, you don't do it. Surprisingly, breakdancing is super common. There's a couple of brothers down in California in one of the no-gi associations that they shot up through the ranks being just breakdancers, and it allows the body control is the biggest thing, right? And it's I can tell within the first 5 minutes how much body control you have, right? If I say, put your hand there and you don't know which hand to use, right? Or if I say, put your right hand here and your left foot there and both your right hand and your right foot move, and like, okay, this is going to take a little bit longer. But there are other people like dancers and gymnasts, like I said, break dancers, where you tell them to move in a certain way and they can just naturally do it, So, but that's usually the first 10 to 15 minutes is spent on just those warm-ups, trying to get our bodies loose, all that fun stuff. And all of the warm-ups that I have our people do, except for one, apply somewhere within some technique. We might not get there for 2 to 3 years, depending on how fun they're training and what we're doing. But everything applies somewhere, right? And there's one that's just fun, cool to do. But then we usually move into like a partner drilling session where we show a technique and then we drill, right? And then show a technique and drill. And it can be a little monotonous at times. There's, a lot of thought nowadays about trying to use the play aspect to teach. I think they call it the ecological method. But I'm kind of in the middle where I think both have their place.
What is that?
What's that?
What is that?
It's where like I give you a scenario, like task-based games. I give you a scenario and say, okay, you're allowed to do this, and this is your goal. Figure it out. Right. For some personalities, that's perfect. That works really well. They learn by doing, don't need much instruction. They just naturally move. Me being a little bit of an intro nerd and very much a nerd, I like to, especially when I'm learning something new, I like to see all the instructions, right? And that's how my brain works in most cases, is like, if this, then this. And so I like to be able to explore all the different branches. And so that's usually the way I teach my classes is a combination of both, right? So we'll go through whether it's a technique or series of techniques, whatever it is that kind of build on each other. And then we say, okay, within the last, 10 to 15 minutes of class will be within this framework that we're working on today, play with it, see what works, what doesn't. Can you do the things that we learn, or can you find, something that we didn't even talk about that works, right? And that usually seems to, the combination has done pretty well for me. Or I should say for the people that I teach, and been teaching that way for, 10 years now, if not longer. So,
who is like most of the people that you work with? Who's coming to a jiu-jitsu gym? Like competitors, people who want to compete, people who just want a different form of exercise, or
both?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean all. We've got, I think the youngest we have in our kids class is 4 years old.
Okay.
I think the oldest we have is probably in their 60s.
Okay.
Some people come in and they just got done with college wrestling and they just want to get after it. And some people just want to come in and try to stretch, and I mean, it's basically involuntary yoga. So it's those people tend to focus more on the fundamentals classes. And they're fine with that. The other class that I have in the afternoon, we call the lab, where it's mostly those games. It's mostly that eco method where it's like, all right, start in this position. This is your goal. Go. and we'll just do that for about 30 minutes and then live roll for 30 minutes. So I usually tell people I'd like them to have some experience in grappling, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu or whatever it is. I'm not a big fan of telling other adults what to do. So if somebody wants to come to those classes right out of the gate, we've got some people that's the only class they can make, and so I'd rather people train than not train. And I usually try to be very specific on who I allow them to train with, or I shouldn't say allow them, but who I suggest they train with. But for most people, I usually tell them, 2 to 3 months of normal classes is a good kind of place to start if they want to move into that live rolling. Some people never do. Some people just they're fine doing those games, at the end of the fundamentals classes, and they're happy with that. So
are there, because you mentioned at the beginning, like you can take somebody much bigger than you and still have a chance at winning that fight. So are there weight classes in jiu-jitsu, or are there, okay.
Yep. In most tournaments, there's going to be weight classes just like in wrestling. Okay. With kids, they also usually divide them up by age. They do that in adults actually too. Masters, expert classes, things like that. I think it's usually like starting at 30, it's like every 10 years. And then even those can get broken down into smaller brackets for world championships and things like that. But a lot of times those end up getting smushed together at smaller competitions. So yeah, it's usually some tournaments do it based around like MMA weight classes. Some of them do it more like wrestling weight classes where there's more of them. And it really depends on how many competitors there are and how many matches you're going to get for that. And then they also break it up by belt, by experience level. We tend to do where they have both gi, right, in the pajamas, and no gi, which is more like a wrestling match. And so usually that's more based on they just have like a novice, a beginner, an intermediate, and advanced. Where gi, obviously, we have the belts on, so you can kind of tell people's rank a little bit better by that. So then they also usually have what they call an absolute division, which will be no weight class, all within the same belt. And then they'll have an absolute open, which is no weight class, no belt.
Really?
Just whoever wants to go in can go.
Really?
Yeah. So, and again, there's no one way that all the tournaments have to be. Like wrestling is there's a couple different styles of wrestling, but they're pretty uniform, right? And within at least in the U.S., it seems like. And please, wrestlers, if I'm wrong, please don't get mad at me. I'm still trying to learn it all, right? But with jiu-jitsu, there's all different, like I mentioned before, different kinds of formats, different organizations that people can compete with, for sure.
So what are some of the carryover effects that someone can benefit from doing jiu-jitsu that kind of carry over into other aspects of their life?
Sure. One is just the general flexibility and fitness side of things. Like I said, that's why I started, was because I needed something different. I had done martial arts. I always wanted to be a Ninja Turtle when I was a kid. And isn't that why every 5-year-old starts? They see either Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, whatever generation you're from, and you want to be able to do that. And then find out, oh wait, there's no ooze, which isn't the worst thing. But I mean, just that fitness level. The nice part about jiu-jitsu and the fact that it's both controlled, but you can go full speed, is that there is no better workout that I've found, at least for my personality and my body. It is pretty much my sole source of exercise and has been since I initially decided to lose weight. Like I said, when I started jiu-jitsu, I was, I think, 248 pounds, the largest number I ever saw. And when I fought, I think it was like 2 or 3 years later, I was 177 pounds.
Wow.
That was the smallest I had been since my freshman year in high school. Right. And I've fluctuated since then, obviously, especially moving back to this side of the state and having a family and stuff. But I'm still I'm still in the more optimal range for somebody of my size and my age. On top of that, I mean, just the problem solving skills. I mean, you're basically playing chess with your body. Is the way I usually describe it. Especially in a gi, it's a little bit slower. I've got different grips and things, so I can take my time. And that's why I kind of gravitated towards that, being a power lifter. I could grab like the small athletic scrambly guys and just hold them down, just be like, stop moving, right? Give me time to think, It really is, because there are positions you can get to where you're like, okay, I know I'm safe, right? I'm in a position where they're going to have to do something either drastic or athletic in order to get me out of it. And if so, these are the things they can do. Like I said, my brain works if that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can take a second there and figure out what I want to do or how I want to attack or defend, for that matter, right? And so those are two of the big things that I take away from it. Some people, it's just self-confidence. Yeah. Just to know that, okay, if something happens, I'm not going to panic. That's a huge thing. The number of people I've seen get in a position on the ground, even with somebody smaller than them, and panic is insane. And everybody thinks that they can fight until something happens, right? And the best place to find that out is in a class where it's in a controlled setting and you're being observed and you're with somebody who's not really trying to hurt you, right? But can still make you feel those feelings. At least for me. I think it's good for everybody. Not everybody agrees with me. I completely understand. Another really positive thing for it, and you see this a lot, especially with like officers and with military veterans, things like that, is just the community. The fact we've got 170 some, members, I think, in our facility. There's probably twice that in the area that have grappled or do jiu-jitsu currently or are thinking about it. And all different personalities. Not everybody gets along, but we all have this kind of common bond that when you share, when you go try to strangle somebody for 5 minutes, voluntarily, of course, please always voluntarily consent. But
just go up to a stranger.
I definitely don't suggest it. I definitely don't suggest that. Please don't do that.
Surprise tap.
But after that 5 minutes, how many times do you see, like in an MMA fight, two guys that hate each other, and by the end of it, they're at least shaking hands?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to stay really mad at somebody that you just had that experience with. And the community that builds, whether it be before class, just talking about how your week was, after class, going, hey, I'm hungry, you want to go get something, it's a great place to make friends with people that you have at least similar mentality, if not values, right? And in the end, like any situation, okay, who are the people that really want to get after it? Who are the people that are just here for fun? But we can all get along, hopefully.
Yeah. How much has the community grown? Because when you mentioned when you came back, there weren't that many jiu-jitsu people. Now you're saying 170 plus.
There's quite a few. Now there's three black belts that are, participating, I should say, in the community in the area. A number of brown belts. We've got, like I said, lots of blue belts. From between the ones that have had life get in the way and haven't. My favorite thing about being a coach is when somebody will come in I haven't seen in 5 years. And like we had one guy that trains with us now, trained with us right out of high school, went into the Marine Corps, was a recon Marine, came back and worked for the sheriff's office. And now he has a family and everything, but him coming back after that, or I have another friend that it was just me and him, training in Iron Physique in the afternoon after he came back from starting school in Milwaukee. He went in the Navy, and then 8 years later he comes back, and there's nothing that makes me smile bigger than seeing somebody. And I'm not one of those guys that's like, where have you been? Why haven't you been training? What's been going on? To me, it's like a friend coming back, and that's huge. So, as far as the community goes, we've got, three jiu-jitsu gyms in the area now, a black belt at each. Each one has their own community and kind of the thing they like to focus on, or the thing that kind of sets them apart. And then we've got, there's Holman, there's Toma, there's, Rochester, it's definitely grown from, when I started meeting a black belt was a big thing, much less having some gyms, like especially in the big cities, they've got 10, 15 black belts, one location, and so just the acceptance it's got, I think the value it's got. We work with a lot of military, a lot of veterans, a lot of officers, both law enforcement and correctional officers at our facility. And so that I think is huge. We did our first event a couple of weeks ago called Stay in the Fight, organized by one of the officers, law enforcement officers for that community, just going over how kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, grappling in general can kind of hopefully benefit them, not only with the community side of things, right? And just having that place to go. For me, that's a big thing, is just having a place to go where I know what to expect and it's a community that I want to be part of. But then also just some general skills that can hopefully help them in some way. Yeah. So.
But you guys should all have a little gym grapple off, find out who's top dog.
Oh, I'm sure we will at some point. A lot of us know each other. And I coached most of them. you know, so it definitely, it would be awesome if we eventually get to the point where we have enough people in this area to do, you know, tournaments here. Because right now, like usually we have to travel to the Dells, like the one this weekend is in the Dells or the cities or Madison, Milwaukee, all the bigger towns. So no, I'm hoping so at some point we definitely will be able to. We all, or a lot of us cross train. We try to get to the different gyms and, you know, get those different looks to say, oh, this is the thing I've been working on. What have you been working on? No, you don't know what I'm doing. So let's see if it really works or not. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That kind of leads to my next question. Like for achieving black belt and you're spending, sounds like most of your time teaching others that are at a lower level than you, like how do you continue to improve yourself being at that high level, being at per se the top of the mountain? How do you continue to improve yourself?
Yeah. And in this area, it can be challenging at times. Really it's putting yourself in difficult situations, you know, and that's probably another thing to your earlier question about things that you can take somewhere else is voluntarily putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, kind of like we were talking about before, where I might be in a compromised position. I might have somebody in, like, I might start in somebody's triangle, say, can I get out? You know, and I purposely try to put myself in those positions where I'm getting tapped, you know, 2, 3, 4 times a week minimum. Because if all I'm doing is beating up on people that haven't been training as long as me, what am I learning? What am I getting out of it? And that's how it's been. I mean, since I moved back, there's always been, you know, those people that were right on par with me, that started, you know, around that time. And we've built a lot more since then and worked with a lot more people since then to the point where, okay, if I'm going to somebody who's never trained before, I'm like, all right, just try to hold me down. Just start with that. Put you in the best position you think you can be in. Try to hold me down. And when we get out, we start again. Right? All right, here, grab onto my arm. Just see if you can hold on to it. You know? Just simple stuff like that allows you to, even if it's not even if it's not defend like an entire series of moves or somebody who knows what they're doing, you can get them to a position where the rest of it doesn't really matter. All you have to do is squeeze or hold on or whatever it is. And that's a relatively easy one to way to still try to build those skills.
And so you've talked about how you never really knew you were going to get all the way to black belt in jiu-jitsu. You joined jiu-jitsu kind of on a whim. You wanted to get back in shape. And then you've mentioned also that you love the learning teaching side of things. Was there, when was the moment when you're like, I want to do this full time? I want this to be my job.
Oh, I've said that for years, but unfortunately it's not feasible at this point. I still do have to have a day job. And thankfully, the flexibility it allows me gives me a phenomenal work-life balance. I'm able to balance those things with my family and everything in a way I think that's beneficial in all those aspects. So I can't be more grateful for the situation I'm in. But I mean, as far as just, you know, starting our own gym, it was because I saw a group that needed to be served, essentially. It was the same thing with coaching at Ironworks or, you know, coaching at Three Guys before that. It wasn't so much that I wanted to do that. It's that there was no one else, you know? And so okay, yes, would I have liked to continue competing and things like that? Probably at the time, if you asked me at the time. In fact, I think one of my friends asked me, do you want to open your own gym Sunday? I was like, no, I don't. I don't want to be a business owner, you know, in that respect. I had a lot of other businesses that I would have rather done at the time. But my goal since I moved back has been, how do I help grow the community? Because if there's no community, then I can't train, you know, and I can't do this thing that I love to do. And so that's always been my focus. You know, if I thought it served the community better for me to step away from the business and or from coaching and just participate in it, I'd do that in a heartbeat, you know? But in the meantime, being a business owner, being the coach, or, you know, helping teach other, I usually try to refer to myself more as a teacher than a coach, because to me, they're very different contexts. But I'm trying to just do all I can to help promote the best parts of what it's given me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And in a way that does what's best for the community in general. Yeah. Not just the jiu-jitsu community, but I mean the area, you know.
Yeah. I think you're doing that by being here and sharing your story, and that's right. I'm learning a ton from this. And,
that's good.
I still think I could take you.
Yeah.
I believe you. I believe you.
Well, what what's appealing to me is like someone who is like growth minded. Like there's a clear path to black belt. Like not an easy path
For sure.
but there is a clear path, and there's always that next belt that you want to achieve. And like kind of like starting a business, there's not really an end. The end is kind of ambiguous of like what it could be or what you could build, whereas like you know what you're striving for, and it's just a matter of being disciplined to actually do that. So maybe talk about what role discipline plays in achieving the black belt status.
Sure. And I mean, that's martial arts in general. Like,
sure.
That's the quintessential thing that comes from it. Honestly, it's one of the most important things I tell people if they ask what their kids should do. My kids want to get into martial arts. What should I have them do? I usually, especially depending on the age, I'll tell them traditional martial arts, if they need discipline, is phenomenal for that. That's, I mean, making the, standing still, following directions, being a part of, a class, the whole martial portion of it, right? Just like the military. That was huge for me, and I think that really helped me as a kid. That's part of the reason my parents put me in karate. I got in a bunch of trouble. I got picked on a lot, so part of it was the self-defense and the confidence aspect. But part of it was I was born during the ADD era. You know what I mean? Every kid was, I was eating, Cheerios with sugar and bananas on top of it, and then they wonder why we can't pay attention in class.
Healthy breakfast.
Right? Absolutely. With milk and a Mountain Dew on my way out the door. So why can't they sit still for 8 hours and learn this stuff that they probably already know? So I think that discipline was huge for me, and it's always allowed me to your point, the black belt's a goal, but it's not the end, right? And that's with anything, whether it's business, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's, in anything that you're doing, as long as you're able to not lose yourself when you achieve that goal. Because I've also seen a lot of that where somebody hits a goal that they were going to do, and then they go, oh, now what do I do? And they almost seem lost, And that's something that I've always been relatively good at, and maybe it comes from not being the best or the fastest or always being in first, is that you can always find that next goal, right? Okay, I achieved this, now what's the next thing I need to do? And we started our gym. Okay, what's the next thing I want to do? Well, let's do everything we can to try to proliferate it and grow out from there. So, the discipline to continue to show up on the day you don't want to show up, regardless. Jiu-jitsu, again, in life, the lessons are the same. The day you don't want to train is probably the day you need to most, and guarantee if you don't feel good going in, barring something weird happening, you're probably going to feel good on the way out. Being a business owner within the space, showing up on a day that I could be home playing with my kids, or I have to go teach a class, even if I don't get to work out. That was always something that was, I've always felt that if I'm teaching a class, unless it's structured in a way like our lab class where I can also exercise, I feel like me doing what everybody else is doing takes away from their ability to learn to a certain extent, especially with those fundamentals classes. Right. So during those classes, I'm not necessarily getting repetitions at whatever it is we're working on. Right. But that allows me to focus my attention, my energy, everything on helping the other people do it. I'll find my own time to do what I need to. And so that is a form of discipline. I think that a lot of people have a hard time with, is just to be able to focus what you want to focus on yourself on other people, whether it be in service, whether it be in coaching, whether it be whatever it is, right? The self-discipline, both in the exercise and keeping your body working, but also in, okay, I need to step back. I need to let somebody else shine, or I need to let, I need to take the time I could be spent on me and put to somebody else, But with kids, it's not, sometimes it's the other way, you know what I mean? Where I do anything I can for my kids, but you have to have that decompression time. I have to have that 10 minutes when I get home. Sweetie, I love you. Give my kids a kiss. I'll be back in 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. Just to understand that that's the only way you can give the most to them too, So at time, there are those times where it's like, hey guys, I'm going to have my classes covered for a couple of days. I need a break. I need to go with my wife to the cottage, or whatever that situation is. But then again, I tore my knee just demonstrating something, not even during a competitive situation. And I don't think I missed more than 1 or 2 classes. Well, even through knee surgery and everything, I was still able to teach, so it's, no,
sorry,
go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut
No,
you
go
off.
ahead.
I was just going to ask, was there ever a time when you opened up the gym that you wrestled with the passion for it? Because I know sometimes people, once it becomes like a full-time job, some of that pure joy of doing it is gone.
Oh, yeah.
How did you maintain the passion for it?
I just keep showing up. It's like anything. Yeah. I mean, that's a through line in my life. As I was looking through this, I was like, I just keep showing up. You have to. There are people counting on me. It's it's kind of like a second family to me. And like I said, not everybody always gets along. Sometimes people fall out and they come back in. Sometimes you have disagreements, but in the end, I made the decision when I moved back here that I was going to try to grow the community. I was going to try to do what's best for that. And if to this point, I think that's been me continuing to show up. It's even if no one else is there. If I think somebody's going to be, then I have to be, especially with a business. It's even more important that there aren't really anymore, but there were days where I'd open up, get ready for class just like I would, and one person shows up. Like, all right, this one person, you're going to get all of my attention. I'm going to dedicate this 15 minutes to or 30 minutes or hour and a half, however long you're here, to what you need to work on and go from there. But I mean, in the end, if you make a commitment, you're the only one in this life that you have to answer to, and you're the only one that can decide whether you're living up to your expectations and your values. You know what I mean?
And that's that's easier said than done. But that lesson is applicable to anybody. If you're brand new in business or brand new and you have one person showing up, that you're showing up and you're going to show up the next day and show up the next day, and you can relay that to anything, to your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, your business. If you know what the end is and the goal that you have in mind, sometimes you got to keep showing up and be disciplined to do that. So. And
sometimes, I mean, with back to the black belt question, like not trying to boil the ocean and understanding that one goal, if it seems daunting to you, if it seems unattainable, whatever it is, break it up, right? Yeah. What's the next step? Do the next right thing, right? What's the next thing I need to do? Show up, right? Yeah. Okay, now what? Okay, I showed up for 40 days. Hey, I got a stripe, and seeing that progression. It's definitely rewarding, but just understanding that long term 3 or 5 year, 10 year, 15, whatever your goal, right, isn't an end, right, and that each one of the little goals in between is just as important as that last one, right? I would say the most important day in jiu-jitsu is the day you walked in and put a gi on, right, or your first class, the day you decided to come in and participate, because that's better than 99% of the other people. Yeah. That thought about it and never showed up, right? Or that said, yeah, I'm going to commit to this, and then they couldn't. And things happen. Life happens. Like I said, nothing works like it's supposed to. Yeah. But in the end, as long as you keep showing up, keep doing the thing that you think needs to be done.
That's why there's a lot of blue belts, right?
To a certain extent, to a certain extent. Still better than nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, it's still better than us. We don't even have a belt. So we can't even talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if there's one takeaway you want from this, I mean, there's a lot of takeaways in this, but if there's one thing that you want our audience to get out of this, what would that be?
I guess when it comes to jiu-jitsu itself, it can prepare you, whether you want it to or not, for a lot of things in life, and to deal a lot of things that may not ever be physical. I hope I never have to get in a physical altercation where I have to use something that I've learned. I hope my children never do, but they still do the sport. They still participate in the martial art, because I think it's important not just, to develop your body, but also to develop your mind, and anything you can do, whether it's jiu-jitsu or some other passion, kickboxing, dance, archery, anything that you can take those same lessons and apply it across your life is worth the time, right? And it's worth the investment in yourself.
Great. Well, where can people go to find out more about your gym or you?
Driftlessacademy.com.
Okay.
That's our location. We're on 6th Street in La Crosse, right by the cathedral. I've got a YouTube channel, JITZLIVE, Jits Live, all one word. I've got videos going back probably eight years now. I don't know whenever YouTube really started kicking off, and I got a phone that could record it well enough. Some of the first videos are bad. You can barely see what's going on. Otherwise, you can our email, our contact information is on the website, and people can request. First class is free, so you're welcome to come in, try it out. Yeah, and we'll try to get a video of you choking him out.
Yeah.
Oh, I could try. We should
Anytime.
We should do a live episode at his gym, and I'm gonna kick your butt.
I could choke. I'm confident in my ability in that match.
Oh no, because I was the dancer, so I can move on the ground better.
There you go.
And so I think I could choke you out.
Sunday,
and if you tapped, I wouldn't care. I'd still put you out.
So on Sunday mornings, we have an open mat where anybody can come in and train. Open to all affiliations, people that aren't members of our gym, whatever it is. We just ask that a waiver gets signed. It's free. And we usually live stream it.
Really?
So anytime you guys come on in.
That's cool.
I'll throw some keys on you.
I'll fight dirty too. Like if it's like only grappling and I'm losing, I'll throw a bow. I will punch.
Oh, thanks, Ian. This was really good.
No problem, guys. I really appreciate the time. We'll see you soon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. We sincerely hope that you found value in today's episode and learned at least one thing that you can take back and implement into your lives and businesses. As always, we appreciate your support and hope you can all find a way to pay it forward this week.